Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. This time last year, I did a recap video of my top 25 vintage baseball card pickups for the year and my top 25 Wade Boggs pickups for the year. The reason why I did that type of video is I noticed other YouTubers were doing a top 50 vintage baseball cards in their collection video, and I really didn't have a significant number of vintage baseball cards in my collection that had any significant value to do a top 50. I really only started building my vintage baseball card collection, I think it's maybe around end of 2020 into 2021. Now, I did have some existing vintage cards in my collection prior to that, but again, I just didn't feel that I could put a proper top 50 list together. Well, now that I have another year under my belt of collecting vintage baseball cards, I feel that now I can do a proper top 50 list. Now, I noticed Mike Baseball Collector just dropped his video of his top 50 cards in his collection. I haven't seen it yet, but when I do, I'm sure it's going to blow mine away. But of course, Mike has been collecting vintage baseball cards for a lot longer than I have, so is to be expected. Now, you may be thinking, all right, John, why not do a top 50 Wade Boggs cards in your collection video? Well, that would be extremely difficult. For one, I have about 175 one-of-ones. So try calculating the value of them. Plus, I have some other really rare cards that don't come up for sale very often. So it's hard to judge what the quote-unquote value of some of my Boggs cards are. So it would be very difficult for me to come up with a top 50 list. And so I'm not doing anything with my Boggs collection, so I'm just going to concentrate on my vintage baseball card collection. Now, I'm going to be breaking this top 50 into two separate videos, so they're not really, too long. So this video, I'm going to be looking at cards number 50 through 26, and then my next video is going to be cards number 25 through number 1. Now, the way I determined what cards ranked in the top 50 is I looked at the current average VCP price for that particular card in that grade and based on the slab that is in. Now, that in itself caused some difficulties. I have a lot of PSA cards in my collection, but I also have a decent number of vintage cards graded BVG. And for some of the cards, there isn't a lot of pricing history for some of the VCP, or BVG, the BVG slabs. One case in point is I have a 1953 Topps Worn Spawn in a BVG 6. According to vintage card prices, it's an $86 card. Now, if I were to take a look at it and say, well, how did that compare to a PSA 6? Well, a PSA 6, the average price is like $425. If I say, well, okay, you can't really compare BVG to PSA, well, let's drop it down to a PSA 5. Well, a PSA 5 averages $250. Well, I didn't want to bother getting into, okay, well, do I want to try to do a crossover and say, well, this is maybe comparable to this PSA grade? So I just let the numbers speak for themselves. So that 1953 Topps Worn Spawn is not in my top 50. If I ever get that card crossed over, which someday I hope to, it could very well be in my top 25. But again, I just let the data speak for itself. So there could be some cards here that I show off in a BVG holder that if I ever do get crossed over could jump up on that list because the PSA value could very well be higher than the BVG value. So I think that's all the background information on my list. So I'm going to turn the camera around here and let's go take a look at cards number 50 through 26 of my current top 50 vintage baseball cards. All right, here we go. Number 50 on my list is the 1962 Topps Stan Musial in a BVG 7. Really nice copy there. There is the back of it. So according to VCP, this is an $89 card. Again, if it was PSA, it would be much more than that. But again, according to vintage cards prices, a BVG 7, that's what they sell for, $89. Number 49 is a very recent pickup of mine, and it was the 1963 Topps Warren Spahn that I got at the Philly Card Show a weekend or two ago in a really nice PSA 6. There's the back. According to VCP, this is a $90 card. Next, we have number 48. We have the 1971 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 5. I really like the centering on this one. Don't mind the little things on the corners that brought it down to a 5, but a really nice example of that 71 Topps Hank Aaron. And according to BVG, in a PSA 5, this is a $92 card. All right, next at number 47, this card I picked up at this year's National. It's the 1967 Topps Roberto Clemente in a PSA 4.5. Really like the centering on this one. There's some, edge and corner issues, but the centering is nice, and the main card itself is really sharp. And there is the back. In a 4.5, this is valued at $93. Right, coming in at number 47 on my list, or actually 46, sorry, is the 1963 Topps Sandy Koufax in a BVG 4.5. Again, really like the centering on it, again, for the grade. I think it got knocked down a little bit because of that colored border at the bottom. You can see a little bit of a chipping there. And, the centering isn't perfect. But one of the very few Sandy Koufax, this may be actually my only playing days Sandy Koufax card in my collection. All right, moving on to card number 45. This is one of the cards that I had in my collection a long time ago, one of the ones that I regretted selling, and at one of the, I can't remember which National now, was one that I just had to buy back for my collection, and that is this really nice 1960 Topps Stan Musial in a BVG 7. This was before I drank the Kool-Aid of PSA and was just looking for nicely centered copies of cards. But then I just started switching over to PSA, and it's just a whole long story. But this one in a BVG 7 goes for $100. So there is the back. Really nice card. Love the smile there of Stan Musial. All right, so that was card number 45. Moving on to card number 44, another Stan Musial and another National pickup is his 1958 Topps All-Star in a BVG 8.5. The centering is really nice on that. The corners, just everything. Just that blue background just pops. I think this was one where I forget how much money I had. It was like the last day of the show, and I think I went up to this one dealer and said, "Hey, what do you got for?" I forget what it was, $80, $90, something like that. And, you know, he looked in his case, and I forget what he had this listed for, but he said, yeah, I'd sell it to me. Have had this listed for 100, 110 bucks. And it says, yeah, I'll sell it to you for, like I said, it was like 80, 90 bucks or whatever. And so, yeah, I didn't mind at the time that it was in a BVG holder, but yeah, really nice 8.5. Who knows what that would get in a PSA crossover, but if it's anywhere close to that, the value, the VCP average of a BVG 8.5 is $102. So I think in a PSA, this is worth probably more than $102. But again, that's where I have it on my list currently. So moving on to card number 43 is one of the many Hank Aaron's you'll see on this list. It's the 69 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 5. Really like the centering on that one. 69s have been really hard for me to pick up, to try to get anything decent centered. So that's a nice example there of the PSA 5. And according to vintage card prices, a PSA 5 is now selling for around $104. Again, I went through the average price. All right, card number 42. We have the 1967 Topps Corey Yastrzemski. Just love this card. PSA 6. Centering, I love the centering on this. Again, there's just dinged corners. Pretty much brings it down to a 6. No real ink marks on it. Really, really nice copy. Back's maybe a little off-center, but in a PSA 6, the vintage card prices has this at $112. All right, the last one here in the first 10 is another Corey Yastrzemski, and it's his 1961, his second year card. Have this in a PSA 5. And according to vintage card prices, a PSA 5 averages $114. All right, on to the next group of 5 here. At number 40, we have this one I picked up at this year's National as well. Really glad I did. It's the 1969 Topps Johnny Bench. I went all the way down to a PSA 4. These second-year Johnny Bench cards can get quite pricey when you start getting up into the higher grades. And I found this one, may have paid a little over VCP average, but I just couldn't get over the centering for the 4. And again, if anything, it's the corners that drop it down to a 4. I don't see any real creases in the card itself. But really, really happy with that purchase. And according to vintage card prices in a PSA 4, it averages at $115. I know I paid more than that, but it was well worth it. All right, next on my list is another is a BVG card at number 39. It's my 1953 Topps Eddie Matthews in a BVG 6. Now, what differs with this one versus the Warren Spahn, I think there were maybe some more actual sales of this card in a BVG holder, because according to vintage card prices, a BVG 6 sells for on average $118. So really like this one. It's fairly well centered for a 53. That black border down at the bottom doesn't have too much chipping. Really clean looking card. And there is the back, little off center on the back, top to bottom. You almost lose some of the baseball there at the top, so that takes away some of the grade as well. But overall, great looking card there of Eddie Matthews. All right, coming in at number 38, another national pickup. Just love this card. One that a lot of people say if you collect vintage baseball cards, you have to have in your collection. It's the 1971 Topps Thurman Munson. Picked this one off of, no, this one actually was on eBay. Yeah, I did not pick this up at the National. I was looking for them at the National. The seller on eBay sent this into PSA, was thinking he was going to get a 7. And it came back a 5. So he ended up getting a great deal. I think it was a buy it now or best offer, and I put a reasonable offer in and made the sale. So in a PSA 5, this card is currently going for on average $121. And there is the back. All right, number 37. We have the 1952 Topps Bob Feller, my first 1952 Topps card in my collection. Always loved this card. For 52, it's fairly well centered, a little bit, off left to right. The corners definitely are just atrocious. You got some bend in the corners, some corner wear. It's definitely a 2. But the main card itself, not a lot of snowing. Nice clean image there of Bob Feller. Just love this card. Don't mind at all that it is a PSA 2. Because at the time, anything, PSA 3 or 4, you're talking 3, 4, maybe $500 or something like that. In a PSA 2, this currently goes for $130. And rounding out this next group of 5, at number 36, another fairly recent purchase of mine, the 1963 Topps Corey Yastrzemski in a PSA 7. So happy to finally, again, sometimes patience works out for you. I was patient on looking at these 63s. I wanted one with a pretty clear bottom there. That's really sharp. And of course the centering. Once I saw this one, I knew I had to have it. I forget whether it was an auction or buy it now. But there's the front and there is the back. The back is off center, but again, I wasn't too concerned about the back as much as the front. And in a PSA 7, this currently sells for $139. All right, I'm just going to try to slide some of these over here so I can fit everything on. Not sure if I'll be able to do that, but let's see here. All right, coming in at number 35, a national pickup, the 1965 Topps Steve Carlton rookie card in a PSA 4. Love the centering on this. I told the story, the dealer that I bought this off of had a PSA 4 and a PSA 5, and honestly, I couldn't tell the difference between the two. The centering was almost the same. Maybe one of the corners was not as bad in the PSA 5 as this PSA 4, but for the price difference, I wanted to save money, so I went with the 4. I had no problem dropping down a grade, given that the two of them looked pretty much the same. And there is the back. And according to vintage card prices, a PSA 4 goes for $147. Try to get that up there. All right. Next, at number 34, is my 1968 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 6. Really like that card of Hank Aaron. Back's pretty nice as well. This one goes for, in a PSA 6, average price is $149. All right. Next one is another Hank Aaron. If you've been following my videos this year, two big players that I've been purchasing a lot of vintage cards of happen to be Hank Aaron and Corey Yastrzemski. So coming in at number 33, we have the 1967 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 5. Again, somewhat hard to find, if I recall, well centered. There's a slight diamond centering to this, but it's very, very subtle. A nice clean card of there in the back. The back, I sacrificed the back a little bit. Again, Hank Aaron cards are fairly pricey once you get into these, you know, the near collector grade, you know, the PSA 6s. So I went down to a PSA 5. Nice front, but I sacrificed a little bit on the back in terms of centering. But again, not a problem with me. In a PSA 5, this one goes for also $149. At number 32, we have a card that has been in my collection for quite a while. And this is one that early on I had submitted cards to BVG that I had purchased at my local card shop, but I've had this one in my collection, I'd say I wouldn't be surprised if it was 30 years. And it is the 1966 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 3. Centering's off. There is somewhere, yeah, you can see it right there. There is a crease. It's properly graded. I don't think, I mean, some of the corners are okay, but with the centering and the crease, you know, a 3 is a reasonable grade on that. There is the back. But it's a Mickey Mantle. And in a BVG 3, it goes for $159. And finally, another fairly recent pickup of mine. Just love this card. Coming in at number 31 is the 1951 Bowman Warren Spahn in a PSA 4. Just love that card. And PSA 4s are currently going for $169. All right, now down to the last 5 of this first 25 of the top 50 is the 1958 Topps Mickey Mantle All-Star. I can get that focused here. There we go. Nicely centered. I think it's maybe the corners that are dropping down the grade there. But again, it's a Mickey Mantle, and I'd take a Mickey Mantle in any grade. So to have one in a BVG 5, even though it is BVG, is fine with me. BVG 5s have been going for about $179. Again, I'm sure if I cross this one over to PSA, even a PSA 4, I'm sure is going for a lot more than $179. But hey, until I get it crossed over, it's still a BVG card. So let's see. I'm just going to put some here. Okay. I want to get all of them in the screen here. Coming in at number 29. One of the nicest cards in my collection. My 1950 Bowman Yogi Berra in a PSA 2. Just absolutely love that card. It is a proper 2. You may not be able to see it, but there are a couple surface creases on the card, but they're so light and they blend in that unless you look really close or at a certain angle, you don't see them. So in a PSA 2, this is currently going for $182. All right, another 1953 Topps that did make the list At number 28 is my 1953 Topps Yogi Berra in a PSA 4. Now, while this is fairly well centered, it is off top to bottom, but what I think got some of the ding there is a little bit of a surface scratches there or whiting, and that bottom border there has some issues. But other than that, the card's really nice. There may be one slight crease somewhere, I think, but at any rate, and it's off a little bit top to bottom. But it's a 53 Topps Yogi Berra, and in a BVG 4, these are currently going for $194. So let's put that one right there. And number 27. My 1953 Bowman Color Stan Musial in a BVG 4.5. Now, when I bought this, I knew it was off center, top to bottom, but when my visual in terms of eye appeal, I don't mind so much if it's off center, top to bottom. Left to right is almost spot on. It almost gives it that almost like the Polaroid look, where you have the picture and you had the section where you hold it. So I don't necessarily mind sometimes when the border on the bottom is a little bit larger. So I went ahead and got that, and I picked it up at one of the nationals. But in a BVG 4.5, this is going for $196. Again, crossing this over to PSA, I'm sure it would be, quote unquote, worth more, but it's technically right now it's in a BVG holder, so you got to go with those prices. All right, and wrapping things up here for the first part of my top 50, coming in at number 26 is another Atlantic City National purchase. The 1958 Topps Hank Aaron white name variation. Again, this is one of those ones where, top to bottom, there's a little bit more border on the bottom than the top, but left and right is pretty spot on. So just like that Stan Musial, I didn't mind that at all when I was looking at this. And a PSA 4 was right in my price range. Getting into the PSA 5s was just not in the cards with what I had that I brought with me for the National. I sacrificed on the back. Again, you can see it's either some wax stains or something. It's still a fairly nice back. It's not like there's any paper loss or anything like that, but I just love the front. And the other thing is, on a lot of the 58s, you'll see somewhere in the background a lot of those little fish eyes. This is pretty much spotless. There is maybe one right up there, unless that's on the holder. Now, there may be one small one right there. But other than that, that is a solid green background there. Just love it. So in a PSA 4, this comes in at $222. So there are cards number 50 through 26 on my top 50 vintage baseball cards currently in my collection. So there you go. Would love to know what you think about those cards in my the bottom half of the top 50. Would also like to know what your thoughts are on like the crossover value. Again, I had a lot of BVG graded cards, and again, looking at this maybe somewhat comparable PSA value, in some of them there's quite a big difference. Now again, at one point I really do want to get these crossed over to PSA. I want to be consistent in my collection. But yeah, wanted to know your thoughts on the whole BVG versus PSA, whether you think I should get them switched over and all that stuff. Anyway, would just love your general comments. And I like the fact that I'm going to be putting this top 50 list together, because it'll be interesting to see next year at this time what my top 50 looks like. through purchases, through prices going up or down. If I switch any of those cards over next year to PSA, how that affects their rankings. So this should be interesting. This is the baseline of my top 50. So looking forward to future years where I can update this list and see where I stand. So that's all I have for you. Until next time, thanks for watching.